Oh man, that's pretty gnarly. That should be completely straight. I got this front center section all straightened out. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a lot better than what it was. You guys obviously saw how bad it was. I already test fitted to make sure the hinges still match up and everything matches up good. And I tacked it in place. I'm not too happy with the way these brackets came out for the 4-stage cylinders. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna cut them completely off and I'm gonna move them closer together so there's less play. Now, I could just throw washers in there and tighten up that gap. That's about 5 minutes worth of work. Or I could cut all of this off, design new ones, weld new ones on, clean all this metal, grind all this, and spend about 5 days worth of work. But in theory, it will be better. The reason I say 5 days is because I work a lot of hours, I work a lot of overtime, so I only come out here and work on the truck for a couple of hours during the day, and I run out of sunlight, and I don't like to make noise for my neighbors. Since I'm doing this at home, I don't have a shop. But I think in the end, it will be better to do it right rather than just throwing washers in there and getting the play out. Because what I initially thought was I want some play in here so that the cylinders don't bind up. I started looking into it, and a couple guys even told me that you don't want slot because then the cylinder will turn itself sideways and shoot towards the side, and that's exactly what was happening. Since I had so much play, one cylinder would be straight and the other one would be sideways, and yeah, that's obviously no good. So we're going to be cutting these off and moving them closer, and while I'm at it, I'm also going to be moving this pivot hole where the upper mount is up towards the top of the rack. So in theory, instead of the cylinder laying down as much, it's going to pick up the top, and it's going to be putting it at a easier angle for the cylinder to lift. It's already able to lift this last stage, but I noticed it struggles a little bit on that first hit. Once I hit it, it doesn't open as fast as it should, meaning it's binding up a little bit. Regardless, so I have 36 volts, so it's going to open it regardless of if it's binding or not. But just to make it a little easier on the pump and on the cylinders and on the hinges and everything, I'm going to move those up a little bit so the cylinders will point down. I got everything put back together, kind of. So now I have them tacked up in a good spot, and I'm going to be moving my front mounts up higher. So what I'm doing is I'm getting all of the old tabs, even though they're bent, but it'll save me a lot more time just using these and having to go buy metal. So I'm going to use these, and I'm going to cut these, and I made a little tiny template. So this is going to go in here like that. There is no real need for such a big bracket, is what I learned. Now for this one, I do feel confident that, you know, using this big overkill bracket will definitely make it stronger because I have a lot of welding surface area on there since I can't weld the inside. So that should be good. On the front, however, it's not that important since it's just pushing that way, and it's kind of backing it up with the angle iron. Since I keep breaking these heims, I'm going to end up trying to make my own. Now, I got this tip from Mike from the Little Maniacs and Juice from the D1. Both old school guys that have been doing this for a lot of years, and they recommended that I do this. So I'm going to give this a shot. This is not my idea. This is what they run, and it seems like they've had some pretty good luck. Now, once again, these are chromoly, and I am breaking these like there is no tomorrow. I've already broken a couple of them, and they're each like 35 bucks. So, yeah, I've already spent over $100, and I just keep snapping them. And, you know, I'm not surprised that they're breaking. It is pretty thin right here. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to get a bolt, grade 8 bolt. I'm going to put that in place where the threads are, and then I'm going to cut this out since I have a lot of scrap pieces like this. I'm going to drill my 1/2-inch hole. I'm going to cut it out, and I'm just going to weld this 1/2-inch plate straight to the top of the bolt, and then I'm going to thread that in, and this is going to be my heim. Now, it's not going to have all the technology that this has, and it's not going to be all nice and fancy, but at the end of the day, I'm only using this for the holes and the threads, so I feel like the bolt with the threads and this with the hole will do the same exact job. All right, well, I got all this down here in a good spot. I got it all tested out. Now the cylinder's sticking out a little bit, but I already cycled it. Everything seems to be good and not binding. Now, in order to weld that, I'm going to pull the stages off and then weld it that way. I still have to weld this one, but everything's just tacked for now. But before I even think about putting the bed on, I figured I'd make these brackets right now because it's easy to see when the bed's not on. Once the bed is on, it's way harder to weld everything and to see if stuff's going to crash with one another. And this way, it's definitely a lot easier to see where everything's going to sit. I know that the bed is going to sit on this one, and it's going to be essentially from here up. So as long as it doesn't protrude this, it should be fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a support for this long third stage, which is the one that goes all the way forward. Now, my cylinder is mounted right here. So this forward section is going to want to bend down from all this weight of all the weight being on that hinge. So right now it hasn't bent too much. The rack was already bent before I even put the bed on in the hydraulics. Just playing with it here at the house, it ended up bending before I put these bottom supports in. But now I'm going to add even more supports, and I got these cut out. This is just a piece of paper that I cut 3 inches wide, and that is going to sit something like this. So it's going to have a weld right here. And the reason I'm going up to here is because this is where the gas tank mount is. If not, I would go a little bit further, but I think that should be fine. And it's gonna go welded to right here to the thin part of the rack where I had to notch it out for the frame of the truck. And then it's just gonna go welded to the top of the angle iron for the third stage right here. Also, another thing to note is right now that the bed is not on, the rack tends to droop even more all the way until it hits the gas tank because there's nothing holding it up. Once I have the bed bolted on, the bed actually sits on the factory bed mounts and it keeps the rack up a little bit more. So if it is close right now and it's not touching, once I have the bed on, it's not going to touch because essentially the bed holds the rack up a little bit. Ended up taking the third and fourth stage off in order to get the welds on the bottom as best as I could, because I did try to do some overhead welds on some of these since it had the bed and everything on, and they came out a little rough. So since I don't have the bed on, I figured it'd be easier to just pull everything off, flip it upside down, and weld it that way. I'm just about wrapping up with everything I'm doing. So now I'm going to put everything back together, but before I put everything back, I'm going to put some grease on all of the inside of my heims just to keep them nice and lubricated. And since I'm here, I might as well do some maintenance. That way we're not running metal to metal. Alright, well, I just pulled off my old chromoly heim. This one still looks to be in very good condition. And I swapped it out for the one that I made. I'm going to put this back in there. What I did also notice is this side isn't the one that's breaking. The one that's breaking is that side. And when I first initially made the new position, I made it closer towards the hinge. And this one, I moved it in about 1/2 inch so it wouldn't hang down so low. So that little bit of 1/2 inch that I moved it in obviously makes it so that this stage opens up less than this side. So when I hit this side and I open it all the way up, it's like this, and when I open the other side, it opens even more. But that little 1/2 inch that I did, that's what's causing it to break, because it's putting that much more stress. So yeah, for those of you guys who are building racks, just know that that 1/2 inch makes a big difference. But it also doesn't help the fact that I have 3 big Group 31 batteries fully charged, and I'm hitting it really hard as it's coming down, and obviously it's breaking. So I'm not really bummed that it's breaking. It just, I gotta keep figuring out all the weak links so I could make this thing all nice and strong. Alrighty, well, I got that guy in there.